My name is Marty Versatility. I graduated from SLIS in 2011 in the Archives History degree. I am the Vice President of the Alumni Board.
Can you hear her, Jane?
Well, do you want me to talk to Jane or
To everybody.
Okay, so Jane knows who I am. Like, she's on our board too. So. Our President, Ana Muñoz, works in Western Massachusetts, so she is on her way. She'll be here later. I'm so happy to see you. Our speaker has a unique perspective in how to use a library science degree. Jane Sanchez is a Simmons SLIS alumna and the recipient of the 2018 SLIS Alumni Achievement Award. We, the members of the Alumni Board, are excited to hear Jane's presentation today, as we're sure you are, to energize us and remind us of the value and versatility of a degree in library science. Although Jane could not physically be here today due to a Library of Congress issue, we are still excited to hear from her. Before we hear from Jane, though, we're going to introduce Dr. Sonia Erdeles, who is the director of SLIS, who is going to introduce our speaker.
Hello, everybody. I'm really delighted to introduce our speaker, Ms. Jane Sanchez. As you already heard, Ms. Sanchez is the 2018 Simmons School of Library Information Science Alumni Achievement recipient. And we honor her because of her extensive career in librarianship and because she is the current 25th Law Librarian of Congress. She manages the operation and policy administration of the Law Library of Congress, the world's largest collection of legal materials. She assumed this position on February 6, 2017. Prior to the Law Library, Ms. Sanchez has been Chief of Humanities and Social Sciences at the library since October 2014. The division provides research services in the library's main reading room, its local history and genealogy section, its digital reference team, and its microform and electronic resources center. Under Jane's leadership, services to researchers expanded and outreach to the division's RSS feeds has led to more robust use of the collections and services. Ms. Sanchez also served as a business unit managing director at the United States Government Publishing Office, as an associate director of Justice Libraries, Justice Management Division, U.S. Department of Justice, as departmental head of History and Culture Libraries at the Smithsonian Institution Libraries, and as an acquisition manager for electronic databases at DNA Inc., which is a legal publisher, in addition to library work at Harvard and University of New Mexico. She has received numerous awards over the course of her career, including the award from the United States Department of Energy for sustained superior service and from the Justice Management Division and the Smithsonian Institution for Workflow Improvement. Ms. Sanchez holds a JD from American University's Washington College of Law, a Master of Library Science from Simmons College, a BA in English from the University of New Mexico, and it is my pleasure to invite Jane Sanchez to address us today.
Good afternoon, Assistant Dean Knowles, Director Erdeles, Alumni Board President Boniolo, I hope she's there now, respected members of the Alumni Board, fellow alumni, future graduates of the School of Library and Information Science. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I am delighted to spend some time with you today to discuss how versatile my Simmons degree has been for me. My name is Jane Sanchez, and I have the honor of serving as the 25th Law Librarian of Congress, as well as the acting deputy librarian for LC's newly formed Library Collections and Services Group. And of course, we have an acronym, LCSG. I'll tell you a little bit more about LCSG a little bit later. As you may have determined from the introduction, I have worked in libraries and information management my entire career. Since my undergraduate days as a work-study student at the University of New Mexico, and upon graduation, I pulled up stakes and moved to Boston. There, I worked at 2 libraries at Harvard University. First as a circulation and reserves assistant at Lamont, which was the undergraduate library in the Yard. And during my time working in reserves and circulation, I was selected to be a reference intern for Harvard. The internship required that I move to Gutman, which was at the Graduate School of Education, to serve as a reference intern. While I was there, I earned my MLS as a part-time student, and some 10 years later, I decided to study law. I became interested in law when I was standing up a legal collection for the U.S. Synthetic Fuels Corporation, which was a quasi-government agency. SynFuels was to be a financial bridge for the development and construction of commercial synthetic fuel manufacturing plants as alternatives to imported fossil fuels. Perhaps some of you remember in the late 70s, OPEC had a very strong hold on all petroleum coming into the country, and SynFuels was set up to be a bridge so that American manufacturers could create synthetic fuels to replace that issue, if you will. I became interested in the legal angle at that point because I was setting up a legal collection for the Synthetic Fuels Corporation. So I decided to sit through an LSAT prep course, and I then enrolled at American University, Washington College of Law. Again, I had to attend as a part-time student in the night school program, and that program took me 4.5 years to complete. I sometimes wonder if I'm either very diligent and persistent or just kind of crazy, because I've taken 2 graduate degrees as part-time students, but I had to work. So I would like to chalk that up to persistence. Later, as I continued to pursue my law degree, I was asked to serve as a consultant and design a new workflow to track court opinions at BNA Incorporated. BNA was an entirely owned, employee-owned company that I worked for after I began law school, and I actually was there for about 18 years. It was a wonderful experience. The new workflow that I was asked to design included a process to singularly identify each court opinion coming into the company by author, title, and subjects. And doesn't that sound familiar? When the new workflow was announced, I was hired to manage the unit and ensure adoption of the new process. The unit, which had the acronym JOPINS for Judicial Opinions Unit, acquired slip opinions from federal and state courts all over the country. So while it wasn't a traditional library job, I felt that my library skills in terms of organizing information were the skills that I needed to develop this new workflow. Each opinion was screened, we read them, and we sent them to the BNA legal editors because they matched subject profiles that we had set up for each of the publications. We gathered slip opinions from 94 U.S. district courts, 13 U.S. courts of appeals, and the state appellate courts. That is the second and highest level courts from each of the states. We screened them, we made copies, and we distributed them to the legal editors twice a day. 11 years later, I was promoted to Director of Information Resources, and I assumed management of all the units at BNA that gathered primary legal sources, including, and that unit included the BNA Library, state laws and regulation, state attorneys' general opinions, All of these primary sources were critical for the various daily, weekly, and bi-weekly legal services that B&A published. We established profiles for each of the services, and we delivered those primary sources. Based on my expanded profile, I developed and later submitted a proposal to B&A to develop a singular source material management system. The system was to be a centralized repository for all of the primary legal documents coming into the company, and we organized them by the type of source. So if they were state attorney general opinions, if they were court opinions, that kind of thing. The system was to gather or code all of the court opinions, the state attorney general opinions, state laws, state regulations, and to put them in a single place so that they could be accessed by all of the services and summarized or used in full text by those services in their publications. Any service could pull the sources, develop stories about them, or use copy announcing their developments. In fact, the system was only recently retired, about 20 years after I had developed the proposal for it. Following B&A, I became department head at the History and Culture Libraries at the Smithsonian Institution Libraries. I managed 6 libraries and the research annex for Smithsonian Libraries. This was a very exciting time for me. Some of the libraries I had were Center for Latino Initiatives, I had American Indian, I had National Postal Museum, American History Museum, Anacostia, which became the African American Museum, which is now down on the mall. And it was really an exciting time for me because I learned so much about Smithsonian and also the services that we could provide the various museum specialists and curators who were developing the exhibits at Smithsonian. Later, I became Associate Director for Justice Libraries at the U.S. Department of Justice, and I managed 10 libraries in downtown DC. I also managed the library services and acquisitions process for all of the libraries that DOJ had across the country. There were about 14 libraries that were in various district courts and courts of appeals across the country. And we supported them with research, and we also, when I licensed databases, I made sure that they could access them as well. And then I became the business unit managing director at the U.S. Government Printing Office, which is now the U.S. Government Publishing Office. In that capacity, we supported 1,200 federal depository libraries across the country and U.S. territories. And we created cataloging and indexing for all of the congressional publications that were coming out of the Congress and then being distributed to those federal depository libraries. I came to the Library of Congress in November of 2014 when I was appointed Chief of the Humanities and Social Sciences Division. As many of you know, HSS, or Humanities and Social Division, Humanities and Social Sciences Division, is home to the magnificent main reading room and several other smaller units, including the Microform and Electronic Resources Division, and the Local History and Genealogy Division. While serving as chief of HSS, I was asked to investigate and write a report called Shine a Light on Reference. The goal was to highlight the expertise and achievements of the reference staff at the Library of Congress and to suggest new ways to highlight those achievements and advance the important work that was done by 14 of the library's reading rooms, including general collections and special collections, and also several international collections. At the end of 2016, the law librarian retired for a second time, and that's a long story, and I was appointed to be the 25th Law Librarian of Congress in February of 2017. In fact, it was my work on the Shine-a-Light study and the proposal to reinvent HSS into a new division called Reference and Research Services that recommended me to serve in my collaborative duty as acting deputy librarian for library collections and services. Since October of last year, I am overseeing now the Law Library, the 14 other reading rooms here at the Library of Congress, and ABA, that's the Acquisitions and Bibliographic Access Division, Preservation and Collections Management, and Overseas Operation Division. The overseas operation that is under the Library of Congress has 6 offices around the world in areas of the world where it's difficult to acquire material through vendors. Those offices are in Nairobi, Cairo, Jakarta, Islamabad, Rio de Janeiro, and New Delhi. So also those are also within the division that I now represent. The 6 OVOP offices, these are the overseas offices, acquire, catalog, preserve, and distribute materials from areas that are essentially unavailable through conventional acquisition methods. Their work supplies LC and over 100 participating institutions, primarily academic research libraries, matching purchases against profiles developed for each institution. In fact, the overseas offices are a major supplier of foreign legal materials also to the Law Library. Last summer, while I was attending IFLA, which is the International Federation of Library Associations in Malaysia, I visited our Kuala Lumpur office in Malaysia, and it's located at the American Embassy there. It was very exciting to see on the shelves all of the materials that had been acquired for Columbia University, Stanford University, Berkeley, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really exciting to kind of get to the ground level and see what some of the folks around the world are doing, not just to advance the Library of Congress, but also to advance major academic institutions in the US. In my career, I have had the pleasure of working in technical services as a student, and I was filing cards in the card catalog. Some of you may not remember filing above the rod, and then later advancing to pull the rod, so that when I graduated to full competency, if you will, I was able to file into the card catalog and then pull the rod and actually file into the catalog. I also served as a cataloger of Spanish and Portuguese language materials at the University of New Mexico. I created back of the book indexes and a taxonomy and assigned metadata and created a commercial database for the US Department of Energy. I have been a reference librarian at Harvard and UNM, University of New Mexico, and I've worked for BNA, a legal publisher. And as I said earlier, I was actually at BNA for 18 years. That's the longest I've been anywhere in my career. I've had the pleasure of working in public and private libraries, in commercial and non-commercial areas, both inside and outside the federal government. But every step along the way has been an adventure that has brought me to where I am now. So my advice is this: don't shortchange yourself. Please recognize how versatile our degree is. For me, it has given me a career that has been exciting, and I've enjoyed every step along the way. Like Rachel Weisz in The Mummy. I don't know if some of you have seen the movie Mummy, but she says, I am proud to say I am a librarian. We often hear the mistaken idea that everything is on the internet nowadays. There may be a lot there, but much of what's there is untested. And I like to say that the internet is the good, the bad, and the ugly. I believe that as librarianship continues to evolve in a positive way, the evolution of information and information management creates new opportunities for anyone in our profession. In the past decade alone, libraries have transformed dramatically. Wireless services, e-books, mobile access, chat reference are all part of basic service suite nowadays. And now more than ever, public libraries are a place to make community connections. The demographic makeup of our communities has become more diverse, and information has moved from a resource to a commodity. Libraries are places that people seek for unvarnished and accurate information. Books are only one part. Libraries are essential in helping citizens navigate and access knowledge. Today, I believe libraries are needed more than ever. By securing a library card, you can borrow a print or electronic book, use free internet, or attend a course to increase digital literacy. Most importantly, however, libraries are the places where you can expect smart and clear answers to even the most difficult questions. Not long ago, libraries were recognized as places that housed printed materials and staff and provided workspace for research. Now they're being transformed from book warehouses into vibrant information hubs, offering end users 24/7 access to timely, accurate, and compelling information. That transformation results in high quality service tailored to the specific needs of clients, expert training and research skills, and transformation from information seeker to the delivery of pinpoint knowledge. Modern law libraries, for instance, are also very different today. They are shaped by staff with specialized skills rather than by bookshelves and bound volumes. Knowing where to locate specific information is a skill that allows our librarians to provide timely, accurate, and high-quality research assistance. Today, our libraries are resources with more strategic presence and customer-centered focus. We live in an age of the information overload where we can access data from almost anywhere with a few clicks on the keyboard, tablet, or smartphone. However, not everything on the internet is accurate or correct or directly on point. We librarians are specially trained to locate the most accurate and up-to-date information available, no matter where it resides. And that leads me to my second non-traditional career for librarians topic. A degree in this field can prepare you for many different career paths beyond traditional librarian, and my career certainly is an example of that. Many public and private organizations demand the suite of skills that we possess, including titles like Information Resources Specialist, Archivist, Preservationist, Curator, Project Manager, Knowledge Manager, Researcher, Metadata Analyst, Database Administrator, Writer, Editor, Records Manager, Information Technology Guide. Explore e-commerce, marketing, and business development. Online retailers may be an opportunity as well for metadata and taxonomies. User interfaces need designing and constant tweaking to ensure access. Browsing structures need creating and supporting. Customer and site visitor data need managing, interpretation, and reporting. Finally, take steps now to boost your career later. Before you graduate, get experience as a student worker, a graduate assistant, a paraprofessional, an intern, or a volunteer. Gaining relevant work experience now, even in lower level positions, can help distinguish you from the competition. I encourage library students to start with internships in the public or private sector to begin to discover what you like and what kind of work or work environment motivates you. Don't wait to graduate to begin applying for jobs. Start early. Many libraries, especially federal government, have a long hiring process. I've worked in libraries where we hired people in their last month of graduate school or the final semester of library school. Next, market yourself. Create a web presence to promote your abilities. The prevalence of electronic and digital information nowadays increases demand for tech-savvy librarians. Make sure to obtain and cultivate strong technology skills. If you can, be geographically flexible. Join a library association. I've been a member of the American Library Association, ALA, since the beginning of my career, and a member of the American Association of Law Libraries since my BNA days, serving on both the Government Law Library Special Interest section and the Government Documents Special Interest section. Finally, find a mentor and network, network, network. Do not be afraid to ask. If you do not ask, you may not get. Start building a support network early on. You never know who can assist you later in your career. Speaking from my own experience, specializing in a certain field can give your career a real boost. Even after completing my law degree, I was sought after by Smithsonian libraries and my first LC Main reading room position, even though neither of those positions involved law. And remember, special libraries offer unique opportunities to work in corporations, hospitals, nonprofits, the military, museums, law firms, advertising agencies, professional associations, private businesses, and don't forget the government. Many special librarians and information specialists now work outside typical library settings and have non-library job titles, such as many that I have had. Special libraries can serve particular populations, such as the blind and physically handicapped, while others are dedicated to special collections, such as the special collections at Library of Congress or a presidential library, for instance. And now I'd like to tell you a couple things about the Law Library of Congress, of which I'm very, very proud. Since Congress passed S68 in 1832, our abiding mission here at the Law Library has been providing the U.S. Congress with independent, objective, and authoritative analysis. Recognizing the importance of understanding law outside U.S. borders, the Law Library's collection is about the size of 1.5 football fields, and the collection is 60% foreign law in vernacular languages. In fact, most of the Law Library's lawyers were trained outside the U.S., have completed advanced U.S. law degrees, and maintain American bar memberships. Their writings and analysis cover 240 countries. Possessing knowledge of the sociocultural context for countries they represent, our staff curate and provide access to timely, comprehensive, and high-quality legal research materials and analysis. S68 also expanded the Law Library's reach to include affirmative supports for the nation's courts and the executive branch. In fact, in the Library of Congress, we are the only part of the library that is by law mandated to support all three branches of government. To that end, the Law Library maintains a collection of more than 2.95 million tangible volumes and 3.1 million pieces of microfiche. Together, the collection of domestic, foreign, and international materials and the expertise and dedication of experienced foreign and American trained lawyers, librarians, professional and support staff make the Law Library unparalleled anywhere in the world. In fact, many foreign visitors come to our library and indicate that our collection is more complete than what they have in their home country. Finally, if you find yourself in DC, please come visit us at the Library of Congress, and most particularly the Law Library of Congress. You will not be disappointed. And now back to the important stuff. With such a versatile degree, you can work in information management, archives, school library teacher, cultural heritage, history, archives management, or a traditional library. Or you can branch out to a number of interesting other roles: competitive intelligence, information architecture, creating taxonomies, serving as an information officer, data curator, internet trainer, knowledge management specialist, graduate school professor. The world is your oyster. Don't think small. Your job search will benefit from some outside the box thinking. However, jobs are out there and the training and capabilities your MLIS degree has developed at Simmons are most valuable. Go forward with confidence in your ability to find the right opportunity. Thank you. And I did want to say, I'm sorry I was unable to come up. I actually had an appointment on Monday that I thought would not go as it went. And unfortunately, it didn't go the way I'd hoped. So it's a busy time here at the library. And there was also something that came up that I had to take care of. So I apologize for not coming up. And but I'm so glad we were able to do this way. So.
Thank you, Jane.
You're very welcome.
So does anybody have any questions? Anna still isn't here. Traffic was really, really bad today. So I have a couple questions if you, I would like questions from you guys first if you have them. Okay, so I do have a question. So my husband works as a corporate archivist. And when you said you had been at BNN and you were promoted to was Director of Information Services or?
Right, Information Resources. Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you, so a lot of what he has to do is advocate for what he does for his archive and there's really no position above him. So if he wants to move up in the company, he has to create that position and kind of justify why they should be investing in him more. Was that something that you had to do or was that just kind of a natural progression? Because advocacy is so important.
For me, it was more a natural progression. But I will tell you that in many of the situations where I have worked, there has been an official archive. For example, at BNA, we had an archive which gathered the story of the company from its inception. The company actually was established during the Second World War. And it was a daily newspaper during the war. And so there was an archive which told the story of the company. And that was also part of Information Resources. You know, I just keep going back to what I stated earlier, which is we have such a versatile degree that I think what's most important for each one of us in our profession is not to pigeonhole ourselves into one area. So in other words, it sounds like he's working in archives, but in archives, you are also learning so many other things in terms of managing information and that kind of thing that I think, you know, there may be some other opportunities to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, even with what he's seen, it's kind of grown from just acquiring and cataloging his shoes in the archives to kind of becoming an oral historian and working with marketing and public relations. And actually he works for a shoe company and when they launch new shoes, he's got to go and help present the story of it. So it's also that public speaking aspect of it and being able to tell a story. So even within this one position that he's held, it's been interesting to watch how it's changed over the past however many years, 8 years or so.
I have a question too. Hi, Jane. It's Glynis Thomas. I'm actually one of your fellow board members. I don't think we've ever met though. Thanks so much for telling your story. It's always great to hear what other people's experience is. I also had a quick question related to the BNA work, and by BNA I think you mean it was the Bureau of National Affairs. Was that correct? And that was actually purchased by Bloomberg in 2011, right?
Yes.
So it's at that point, I guess, would not be employee owned.
Yes.
Purchase it. When you were coming up with your original proposal at BNA, and I know that this is like going a ways back now for you, what were the things that were supportive of you in coming up with that proposal regarding how you were going to go about starting to categorize and put into various classifications the collection that you had there? Was it, did you draw on what you knew as a librarian and came out of school with, or were there other professional inputs that were helpful to you in that regard?
You know, thank you for your question. It was kind of a combination of things. For one thing, I was now managing all of the units that were acquiring what in law is called primary sources. So these are state attorney general opinions, court opinions, that kind of thing. But also, this was at a time when the publishing part of the company was going to SGML. So the idea was, rather than having all of this primary source material come into the company and start being distributed around the company, the idea was to take it and put it in a central repository once, do all of the coding for that material in one place, and then any service that wanted to use it could take it from that single source. So if you will, it was drawing upon kind of a library example. I mean, we acquire materials, we make it available to everyone so that it can be used multiple times, but it's in one place.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a combination of using library skills, if you will, and also reducing duplication, and also understanding the publishing part of the company well enough, because there had been a new publishing system put in a year or two earlier. And the idea was this was a natural extension, if you will. After creating this new publishing system, how could we maximize and economize on all of these sources coming into the company and make them available in a single place so that anyone using them could come into the system, find something, and then be able to pull it out and use it. So again, it was kind of a, even though it's not a library, it was kind of building on a library kind of system, if you will, of making things centrally available so that anyone could use it.
Yeah, it sounds like a classic information management case study.
Yes, yes.
Great, thank you.
And when I first wrote the proposal, as you can imagine, I think a lot of the IT people were kind of like, well, who is this person and why is she doing this? But I reached out to one of the folks who was over in our IT section, and I worked predominantly with him and developed a proposal, which was then later accepted by the president of the company and the senior management, and then moved forward with our IT colleagues to develop a system.
That's terrific, yeah. IT colleagues still treat you that way, by the way.
But I mean, we use traditional things like, who was the author? What was the title of this document? What were the subjects in the document? What does that sound like? It sounds like libraries. It sounds like information management. So in other words, if someone knew that the State Attorney General of Minnesota had written an opinion on something, they knew where to go and find it. You could go to the State Attorney General opinion area, you could go to Minnesota, you could look through the various state attorneys general opinions by subject and find the item that you were looking for. So even though it wasn't a traditional library, it's very library-like in terms of how it was developed.
And that was electronic, Jane, at that point?
Yes, yes, it was a system. So we actually, while I was at BNA, and I didn't go into this earlier, but while I was at BNA, when I first went to BNA in 1985, we were getting all of the slip opinions in paper. So we got them through the US mail. We got slip opinions. While I was there, the US Supreme Court and a lot of the courts of appeals, the 13 courts of appeals across the country, developed bulletin boards. So I actually made a proposal so that we could start downloading the opinions from the bulletin boards. And actually, my unit, which was called JOPINS, Judicial Opinions Unit, was the first unit in BNA that we had computers so that we could download stuff from the internet. It was the very first part of BNA that had computers across the unit. We also developed the first intranet at BNA while I was there. In fact, I remember having people come in and giving them classes on what is an intranet, and we use the example of what's the internet, but we were now developing an internet inside the company. So part of it was kind of keeping up with technology, but then also using what I consider information management skills to develop new things for the company. And luckily I had a very, my boss was the executive editor, and she encouraged me to try new things and to make proposals. And she would say to me on occasion when I'd say, well, do you want me to try to do this? She'd say, well, just keep doing it until someone tells you to stop. I said to her, well, who's going to tell me to stop? And she said, you'll know. And it was great advice. I mean, this was probably at the dawning of the internet, and it was just a lot of fun. BNA was just a blast. It was just a lot of fun. We were employee owned. We were encouraged to try things and to do new things. And I must say, I did leave before BNA was sold to Bloomberg. And in a way, I'm glad that I had left by then, because it's very different now. I still have many colleagues at BNA, and it's a very different place now than it was when I was there. It's still a great place to work. It's still a lot of fun. People enjoy it, but it's much more corporate than it was. When I was there, there were about 1,500 employees, and we knew every single person in the company. We knew the president, we knew the executive editors, we knew everyone on a first name basis. And now I think it's much more, because it's Bloomberg, I think there's much more corporate oversight from New York and that kind of thing. So it's not quite the same as it was.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I just have a question about your process with deciding to go back to school and get your JD. I know a lot of people that I've been in touch with when I've been in the program did law school first and then felt that they were burned out or didn't want to practice law, so then they decided to then come to library school and to transition to work in a corporate law environment or just in a law environment in general, more doing kind of like that research component of things. And I just wondered, based on your experience, the value that you felt in going back to school and getting that JD, what components of moving forward in your career did you feel that that was like necessary? And would you recommend that someone who was interested in working and doing more legal research, would you recommend to them that they get a JD even if they weren't planning on practicing law?
That's a good question. We actually, and I probably didn't describe this when I spoke about the law library, but most of the law librarians here have JDs and MLSs. It's not an absolute requirement. I joke with some of the attorney librarians that I work with that if they had their law degree first, they came to the light and got their MLS later. When I went to law school, I attended night school, as I said earlier. Many of my colleagues who were in night school with me were either lawyers already who were going to library school, or going to law school now, who had other professions before. I actually went to law school with quite a few doctors who were getting their law degrees. I mean, it was really interesting, and I don't know if it was burnout and they were going to law as a second profession. I'm not sure, but many of the librarians here who are also attorneys, and many of the attorney librarians I worked with at DOJ, I would say about half of them had their law degrees first and went to library school, and the other probably half had a library degree and then went to law school. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I just had always thought about going to law school, and I started working. And when I worked for a couple years, I just realized that it was something that was still an unfulfilled wish, and I wanted to do it. And so that's why I decided to go to law school. And obviously, I'm very glad I did, because I've had great opportunities since then to work both in law and using my law degree outside of law. Even at Smithsonian, I was asked to do some things because they knew I had a law degree, which was kind of interesting because I wasn't working in law. So in other words, there were occasions where the general counsel at Smithsonian, they needed to have their small law collection organized. They asked me to work on that. So, you know, for me, it was just always something that I had wanted to do. And because I started working, I kind of went down that path, but I wanted to come back to law school, and I did, and I'm glad I did. It was hard. It was 4.5 years. It was tough, but I'm glad I did it. And I made lots of great friends in law school, so it worked out well.
Did you concentrate in any sort of particular area of law?
I actually concentrated in IP, in intellectual property. I actually thought that maybe I would do something either with copyright or maybe counterfeit goods, you know, that kind of thing. But then I realized I started having a family, and I realized that probably practicing law was not something that was family friendly. And I felt that at that point, I decided that having a library degree and a law degree was a great combination for me and worked well for me in terms of my work-life balance. So I continue to pursue that and make it my combination. But as you know, many people in librarianship have specialties. They may have a master's degree or a specialty in anthropology or some, you know, history or something. Many of the librarians here at the library have, if not advanced degrees, they have specialties in, you know, their undergraduate years that lend itself to librarianship. So we work with some very talented people here at the library, very special people. But I think having a specialty in addition to librarianship is definitely a plus.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Jane. Thank you for speaking with us. Similar to when you were getting your advanced degrees, I work and am going to night school. And I was wondering if you have any insights on how to best take advantage of the extra opportunities like internships or assistantships while also juggling work and school.
Well, I mean, you know, obviously there's no one size fits all, but I mean, I do know that here at the Library of Congress, we have fellowships, we have internships. Many of our internships are paid internships during the summer. The library takes very seriously bringing young professionals into the profession, and so we put our money where our mouth is. I don't know of many internships that are unpaid here. We do try to make them paid internships. We actually do some HACU, Hispanic American College Association fellowships. I mean, we try to bring young people into the library. Some people come here. We have an intern this semester actually who's working. She's a student, but she's working here like, I think she works 20 hours a week or that kind of thing. But I mean, I really do think that as hard as it is, making the ability to do something like that can really pay off in the future. Right now, we're doing a project where we're digitizing Hispanic language materials, Spanish language materials from the Southwest before that part of the country was part of the U.S. And so our fellow, our intern is actually working with Spanish language materials and preparing the materials for digitization. I'm not sure what her career path is eventually. I don't know if she plans to go into information management or what, but I think whatever she gets from her internship here is something certainly she can put on a resume and she can use as she begins to decide what she wants to do as a career going forward. So I'm less familiar with Boston than I am with DC now because I've been in DC since, gosh, 1979. But there certainly are lots of opportunities for internships and that kind of thing in DC. All of the agencies do it. Many of the associations do it. There are lots of opportunities here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi Jane, it's Anna. I got here very late, and I apologize. I'm Anna Boniolo, and I am the current president of the Alumni Board, and I thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry I was late, but I live in Western Massachusetts, and I am a librarian at a boarding school, and we just started back yesterday, and first few days of the new term can be very crazy. And I just wanted to thank you, Jane, so much. Yesterday, Jane's assistant called and with terrible news that she wasn't going to be able to make it today. And I thought my heart dropped into my feet. And I thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because we've been talking about this for so long, getting Jane to speak and her flexibility to be with us today, even far away, but using the technology, which is so important to our work as well. Thank you so much, Jane, for doing that. I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but I did meet with Jane in November in DC, and I had a wonderful conversation with her, so I kind of knew what she'd be talking about. And thank you all for being here as well, as I said, and thank you to M. Claire and Dr. Erdelez, and I just want to have the members of the Alumni Board stand up. Of those of us who are here, that's Marty as well. She's going to be shy and shit, but she spoke before. And Lindsay, yes, I did. When you walked in, I'm like, there's Lindsay. You all know Lindsay, I assume, right? Thank you for, it takes a long time to organize events. So I'm glad we were able to get this off and running today. What I do want to say is that alumni networking is fantastic. You're all students now. Hopefully one day you'll be in our shoes and be able to participate as an alum and either as a mentor or coming back and speaking and sharing your experience. We have a wonderful profession with so many things that we can do, but sharing that message I think is almost as important as actually going out and doing it. So some of us will be at the career fair on April 17th, if I don't have that date correctly. Please stop by and speak to us. We're happy to give you some tips or find some way to get you involved, connect you with a mentor, and stick around for some refreshments and speak with us and have a great rest of your term. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.